Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Ichigo Master Inner Hollow and Harem with Zero Squad Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content, and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the Neoryu777 for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story. Link in the description. Morning already? Kurosaki Ichigo sat up quickly, already fully awake. It was just in time, as his father, Kurosaki Isshin, had busted in the door and had lunged at Ichigo. Ichigo snagged his father's ankle before Isshin could hit him and threw him out the window. "Do you have to do this every morning?" Ichigo bellowed. At the silence, he huffed and quickly dressed. "Stupid school," he muttered. "Why do I have to go to school again?" "Oh yeah, because it'd be nice to be able to return to a simple life if Soul Society ever gets off their collective asses and learns how to fix their own damn problems." Ichigo sighed, his signature scowl firmly on his face as he exited the room and joined the rest of the family at the dinner table. Isshin was, of course, unharmed. Ichigo had always wondered about that. No matter what I do to him, he never has more than a bruise or a black eye. I wonder why? Ichigo shrugged. Maybe my Ryatsu rubbed off on him too, like it did Chad and Inoue. Resistant to damage? Whatever. "Ichi and your breakfast is ready." Yuzu, Ichigo's sister, chimed. "Thanks, Yuzu." Ichigo took his toast from Yuzu, slung his backpack over one shoulder, and walked out the door. Ichigo set off at a casual walk to school, letting his mind wander back to his previous thoughts. I wonder why Ryatsu caused such strange changes in Chad and Inoue. I mean, Inoue has the power to reject reality and substitute her own, depending on how strongly she feels about it. And Chad's ability is more like a hollow than a Shinigami, and I never used my inner hollow's power before I went to Soul Society. Ichigo paused mid-step for a moment. Wait. Even old Hattenclog said that Chad's ability was more similar to a hollow's than anything else. Why is Chad able to use his powers even in human form? A sudden strike of fear paralyzed him. Is my inner hollow able to take over, even if I don't turn into a Shinigami? As if in response, Ichigo heard a faint maniacal laughter. He looked around and, to his despair, saw no one nearby. He scowled harder. So it's useless to hide in my human form. Damn it, I need to be able to fight without having to worry about that son of a bitch trying to take over. Well, I've solved all the rest of my life's problems with violence, maybe I can do the same with this. Ichigo looked up at where his feet had taken him. School was in sight. He quickly weighed his choices. Go to school, don't go to school, what to do. His choice was made for him when Inoue appeared around the corner. "Hey, Kurosaki-kun. See you in class." Ichigo gave a half smile. "Morning, Inoue. Looks like I'm going to class." As usual, class seemed so surreal. Ichigo had a hard time paying attention in class, given that he was always so busy fighting the random hollows that popped up that he rarely had time to study. Every time there was a big fight, it always felt like class was years ago, even if it had only been a weekend. If only they knew Ichigo's side. Almost none of them know the truth. I am almost constantly at war, called to duty by Soul Society. Why is Karakura Town always targeted? And now I'm at war with my dark side. Effing perfect. A roar sounded from the town, interrupting Ichigo's train of thought as he recognized it as a hollow's cry. A quick glance at the rest of the class proved that only the ones with powers heard it. Definitely a hollow. Ichigo glanced at Ishida Yuryu, the Quincy who had lost his powers, who was staring at him. They were friends, but still referred to each other with their family names, as they were competitive rivals. "Get going," Ishida's expression said. "You gonna be okay?" "Yeah. Just go already." "Alright." Ichigo nodded to himself. "I've gotta go use the bathroom." "Back soon," Ichigo muttered as he stalked past the teacher out of the room. Chad and Inoue sighed and glanced at each other, simultaneously deciding to stay behind and take notes, so Ichigo wouldn't fall behind in class. Besides, Ichigo could handle any normal hollow easily. He'd be back in a minute or two. Quickly hiding in a storage closet, Ichigo reached for his Shinigami badge, which would allow him to change into his Shinigami form, leaving his human body in the closet, dead to any who cared to examine it, until Ichigo was ready to re-enter it. "What?" Ichigo gasped. He couldn't find his badge. I'll just have to beat it with my bare hands. Or maybe try my hand at Kido. Rukia could do that at least in a jigai. Ichigo ran as quickly as he could, opening a window and leaping out of it, hitting the ground running. To his shock, the hollow was right outside the middle school. Yuzu and Karen went too. The hollow was about as large as an elephant, but instead of ears, it had 6 long tentacle-like things that waved as it moved. Good thing Karen's home sick. Well, at least no one's outside right now. As if Murphy himself was listening to his thoughts, he heard the bell ring for recess. You have got to shitting me. At least this can't get worse. In direct defiance to Ichigo's thoughts, the hollow's attention zeroed in on Yuzu, who had thankfully separated herself from the others behind a hill, out of sight so she could pick some flowers. One of these days, I'm going to learn to stop tempting fate, Ichigo muttered to himself as he sprinted towards his oblivious sister. Why did the hollow have to target the sister who can't fight back against hollows? Hell, Karen can take care of herself. Yuzu! Run! Ichi and I? Yuzu asked, surprised. Ichigo leaned down to lower his wind resistance before leaping up and attempting a powerful kick to the back of the hollow's head. The hollow, having heard Ichigo's warning to Yuzu, was prepared and snagged Ichigo's foot with one of his tentacles, throwing Ichigo to the ground in front of Yuzu. Yuzu's eyes were wide with fear as she began to see the hollow in all its menacing glory. She began trembling. Why can't I move? My legs, they won't move. I can't stop shaking. How can Ichi and I fight this monster? Ichigo, bloody from the harsh landing on the ground, got to his feet unsteadily, glaring at the hollow. Leave, or I'll kick your ass so bad you'll wish you'd been eaten by the other hollows in Hyukomundo. Oh? A human, with such strong spiritual power. I think you'll do well as a main course, with that little girl as a nice dessert. The hollow licked its lips on the mask. Ichigo's eyes narrowed and he raised an arm at the hollow, holding it with the other. Bare hands isn't working. Time to try Kido. All else fails, I lure it away back to the house, so I can transform into a Shinigami Kami. I hope I do better at this. What was that incantation? Rukia always uses this thing, what was it? He took a deep breath. Ye Lord! Mask of flesh and bone. Flutter of wings, ye who bears the name of man. Damn it, can't remember the rest. Hope this works. Heido 33, Sakatsui. Blue fire crashed down. A small blue, fiery orb appeared in front of his hand for an instant, and then fired forward at Hollow's mask, right where Ichigo had wanted. It struck the hollow by surprise and blew up. For a moment, Ichigo thought he'd won, but then the smoke cleared, and the hollow looked more amused than anything. Its mask was hardly singed. Such a weak spell. Even so, you must be a Shinigami. You will taste especially good in my stomach. Shit, Ichigo thought to himself in a mantra. Of all days for me to leave the damn badge at home. That's right, I'm a Shinigami. So come get me. I'm all weak in this jigai, and I can't seem to get out of it. Should prove a challenge for me to kill you. Ichigo bluffed. Nah, I think I'll torment you first by feeding on the girl, and you'll go next, knowing there was nothing you could have done to save her. The hollow cackled, quickly reaching out with its tentacles and snagging Yuzu. Damn it! I need Zangetsu, Ichigo muttered. He could almost feel the reassuring weight of the large, elegant cleaver on his back. A moment later, Ichigo found himself in his inner world, where the sideways skyscrapers were. He groaned. Now is not the time for this. My sister is in danger. Is she really? Now that is interesting. Don't worry though, no time really passes here if you don't want it to. Ichigo spun and saw a bleached white form of himself grinning maniacally back at him. It looked especially creepy on Ichigo's face, as he very rarely smiled. Who the hell are you, and where is old man Zangetsu? I am your inner hollow, if you will. But Zangetsu and I, we're one and the same. The hollow cackled. Ichigo looked at him and delivered deadpan. For one thing, you don't look a thing like him. For another, now that I have an opportunity to ask, how the hell did you get here? I came along at the same time as old man Zangetsu did. Do you remember how you became a Shinigami again, after you lost your powers? Remember how every single time you were in mortal danger, a mask appeared and blocked? Ichigo frowned. Yeah. I remember becoming a Shinigami again thanks to Hattenclog's Urahara. I had a mask on my face at the time and no matter how many times I threw it away, it kept reappearing and blocking fatal wounds. So that's your mask? Our mask, the Hollow corrected gleefully, to Ichigo's consternation. Now, Zangetsu and I are part of the same entity. We are your powers. Old man Zangetsu is your Shinigami powers, and I am your Hollow powers. Whoever is more powerful at the time is in control. The more we are used, the stronger we become. So you're saying, since you were used more often back in Soul Society, you got more and more powerful, and then overthrew Zangetsu? Correct, Ichigo. Ichigo stared as the Hollow's midsection seemed to morph, and the old man he was familiar with came out, standing beside the Hollow with his tattered coattails flapping in a non-existent wind. Zangetsu, Ichigo greeted with relief. Good to see you. But wait, I thought the Hollow overthrew you. Yes, he did. However, your attempt at Kido, being a Shinigami art, and not a Hollow one, has restored enough strength for me to be here for a short while. Zangetsu looked up, where dark clouds were forming. It seems you are in turmoil. Ichigo nodded fervently. My sister, Yuzu, and I are being attacked by a Hollow, and I am stuck in my human body. I see. However, you have grown strong enough to handle normal Hollows even in your human body. Why do you hesitate to use me? Zangetsu asked calmly, as was his wont. You could just let me take control, the Hollow leered. Not a chance. Zangetsu, what do you mean, hesitate to use you? Don't I need to be outside my human body, in my Shinigami form, to use you? Ichigo, do you think that we hold no power when your soul is encased in another form? Zangetsu asked, just as calmly as before. You have sufficient power. Use it. The Hollow began laughing. Zangetsu, you must have gone senile. You really think this buffoon will use your power, and risk me coming out? He has no desire to fight, no desire to kill. Shut the hell up. Ichigo barked at the Hollow. I may never be rid of you, but I don't have to put up with you. Keep it up, and I will beat you down so bad that you'll wish you'd never shown your pasty face here. Ichigo was surprised to see the Hollow settle down and simply smirk at him. That's more like it, King. Now you're speaking my language. Go kill that Hollow, but don't forget, we will fight for control, and very soon. With that, Ichigo suddenly found himself back where he started, in front of the Hollow that was about to eat his sister. Zangetsu! He cried, holding his hands in front of him and calling for his Zanpakuto. Ichigo couldn't remember a time he was happier to see his partner in battle as his overly large sword appeared in his hands. Even so, it was unexpectedly heavy and almost made Ichigo fall in surprise from the weight. Damn, forgot that while my soul body could handle Zangetsu with one hand, my human body isn't as strong. Even so, I should have strength enough for this. Ichigo hefted Zangetsu with both hands, reacquainting himself with its familiar weight, and lunged forward once more. A tentacle attempted to grab him, but Ichigo quickly sliced that off. He almost stumbled as the weight of Zangetsu pulled him in the direction he'd swung, but recovered immediately, taking advantage of the Hollow's pain to power his legs with more Ryatsu. With a cry of triumph, Ichigo leapt upwards and cut the Hollow straight through the mask. It let loose an unearthly scream, but then disintegrated, purified by the power of the Zanpakuto. With the Hollow gone, Yuzu began falling to ground, screaming only to be caught by Ichigo on the ground, Zangetsu standing upright next to him. You okay, Yuzu? Ichigo asked softly. Ichi and I. Yuzu clutched onto her big brother's neck tightly, sobbing in relief. That monster was gonna eat me. Sure, it's okay, you're safe now, Ichigo soothed, holding his sister. He let his Zanpakuto dissipate into spirit particles. Thanks for the assist, Zangetsu. He was only slightly disturbed by the cackle his inner Hollow let loose. I'll deal with you later, Ichigo thought savagely. Looking forward to it, Ichigo. Give me your best shot, and we'll see who is the king, and who is the horse that supports him. The Hollow laughed once more, fading into the back of Ichigo's mind. Ichi and I? Yuzu asked quietly, feeling a sudden sense of hostility in the air. Are there more nearby? No, Yuzu. Just wondering why they targeted you of all people. Speaking of, why did they target Yuzu? I thought they went after people with significant amounts of spiritual energy. Well, I suppose Yuzu does have some energy, as she could see the Hollow, and she's an easy target. On the other hand, it could be Aizen. Ichigo shook his head absently. I can't go around thinking everything is Aizen's work. This is probably a coincidence. Probably. Come on, Yuzu. Let's go home. He picked her up and set her up on his shoulders so she was riding piggyback. It was a treat he very rarely gave. Only Yuzu was able to ride Ichigo piggyback, and only then when Ichigo felt like it. They walked in silence, which Ichigo appreciated. Yuzu was clutching his hair almost painfully, but Ichigo said nothing. He'd rather that than Yuzu start crying again. Halfway there, Yuzu broke the silence. Ichi and I? Yeah? I'm sorry. Ichigo swiveled his eyes and neck as best he could to look up at her. What for? I froze and couldn't run, and then that big monster almost ate me. Yuzu whispered, feeling very guilty. Ichigo shook his head, gently so Yuzu wouldn't pull too hard on his hair. Not your fault. Was that your first time actually seeing one? He felt, more than heard, Yuzu's quiet affirmative. Ichigo smirked and looked back at the road. Don't worry about it. I was scared the first time I saw one too. What? But you're so strong, Yuzu protested. Back when I first saw one, I was just a normal guy. Well, as normal as you can be with our pop as a father figure, Ichigo joked lightly. To his relief, he heard Yuzu giggle. I could sort of see it, and it was rampaging in the city, looking for a good soul to eat. I was with a ghost at the time, and we were both scared stiff for a minute, watching in horror as the hollow got closer and closer. I snapped out of it and ran. You never got the chance. Thanks, Ichi and I. She paused. What did that hollow mean, that you were a Shinigami? Well, shit. Yuzu, you know those times that you don't know where I am? That I would just up and disappear? He felt her nod, clutching him a little tighter. Well, imagine that there are hundreds of dead people from our world, who live in another world, and they come back to this world to make sure those monsters go away. They're called Shinigami. With me so far? Why yes, are they like zombies? Ichigo couldn't help it and let out a chuckle. Zombies? No. They look just like you and me, but only special people can see them. Like you, me, and Karen. They're like superpowered ghosts. Oh. That makes me feel better, Yuzu admitted. Now imagine that one of those monsters attacked our family one day, and the Shinigami who came to save us got hurt. So she gave me her powers, and I left my body. I became one of them. Yuzu gasped. DD, does this mean TT that you're DD dead? Ichigo looked back up at her, and tried his best at a reassuring smile. Nope. Still alive. I can just leave my body sometimes and kick ass. So that sword? Ichigo nodded, looking back at the road. Yeah, that was my Shinigami sword. His name is Zangetsu, and he hates it when it rains. What? Your sword's alive? Yeah. Ichigo smirked. He likes sitting on flagpoles. Wonder how many times he fell while practicing? Ichigo had to repress a snigger. Are all Shinigami swords like that? Yuzu asked, curious as any girl her age would be. Alive? Sure. I have a friend, Abarai Renji, whose sword's name is Zabamaru. But how did you find out your sword's name? Ichigo lightly shrugged, not hard enough to make Yuzu uncomfortable. The sword talks to us over time, and when we're ready, they tell us their names. As for me personally, it was after I lost my powers, and had to get them back to save Rukia. By then, they had arrived at their home. Ichigo set Yuzu down, and walked with Yuzu inside. Feeling particularly brotherly, Ichigo checked up on Karen, who was fast asleep in bed, resting and trying to recover from her illness. I'm heading out, he informed Yuzu. Gotta get back to school. See you later. Yuzu already looked better, now that she was back in her kitchen. Bye, Ichi and I. 15 minutes later, Ichigo walked into the classroom, his classic scowl already back on his face. The teacher gave him an incredulous look. What took so long? You've been gone for over half an hour. Ichigo gave an annoyed look of his own back at her. I'm in no mood for this. Family matter, he answered curtly. Why do I even bother? The teacher asked rhetorically. Go sit down, Ichigo. Whatever. Ichigo glanced at his empty desk before sitting down in his seat by the window. No more than 3 seconds later, there was a note on his desk. He glanced at the various friends in his class. They were all apparently studiously paying attention to the teacher. Ichigo allowed himself a very small smirk. Oh yeah, we're good. He casually opened it up and read the contents. This is unusual. SS never takes this long. Q. Agreed. It sounded like a normal hollow, so SS should have beaten it by now and returned. Gee. I'm worried about him. I can't think of any reason he would take this long, unless it's a very powerful hollow hiding its power. But then, SS would have gone higher, right? R. Perhaps, but he has been reluctant to transform recently. Maybe he's trying to beat it as he is? Q. Why would SS not transform? G. Not sure. We should ask. Q. I'm sure he'd tell us if something really bad was going on. R. Unless it only involved him. Then he'd try to hide it. Q. It's been half an hour, and he's still not back. But I can sense him. He's at his house. R. Maybe he's decided to skip the rest of school today. G. That makes no sense. SS always comes back. Oh wait, I can sense him moving back towards us. Q. I'll pass him the note when he returns. G. Ichigo nodded to himself. They had come up with different pen names, so just in case the note did get caught by the teacher, no one was revealed. Ichigo was SS, short for substitute Shinigami. Ishida as Q, short for Quincy. Chad was G, short for giant. Inoue was R, short for rejection. They had chosen those names as they described their powers. Ichigo and Ishida were obvious, but Chad's right arm, when transformed, he called El Brazo Diresh del Gigante, or the right arm of the giant. Inoue's powers were all about rejecting reality, hence rejection. He jotted down a quick note: meet up at Hat and Clog's shop after school. S.S. With that, he subtly passed it along to Chad, and quietly attended class. Later, at Urahara Kasuk's shop, they joined Urahara at the table. So tell us, Kurosaki, what happened this morning? Oh? Did something happen? Urahara questioned. Ichigo was taking a long time dealing with a normal hollow, Chad explained. Ichigo sighed. Look, it's stupid. I forgot my badge, so I couldn't become a Shinigami. What I wanted to talk about instead was this. He stood up, summoning his power. Zangetsu. As before, Zangetsu appeared in his hands. After holding it in his hands for a short time, he let it dissipate into spirit particles and sat down again. KKK Kurosaki. Ishida stuttered. My, this is an interesting development, Urahara murmured. Yeah, no kidding, Ichigo agreed. I've developed the power to summon Zangetsu even while I'm in human form. Urahara, do you know anyone who can do the same? Yes I do. You may have forgotten, Ichigo, but when you regained your Shinigami powers, it was I who forced you to learn Shirkai. My cane has my Zanpakuto in it, remember? I am almost always in my Jugai, Urahara replied with a large smile. But there's also more. They're a group of Shinigami who were banished by Soul Society at the same time I was, 100 years ago. Why were they banished, Urahara-san? Inoue asked. Urahara lost the smile on his face. Aizen, in his research, forced them to undergo a Hollowfication process, and then pinned the blame on me, hence why I was banished. Through my efforts, they remained Shinigami, but they now have hollow powers. These people have remained in Gigace for years in order to mask their Ryatsu from Soul Society, or risk being executed. They have since learned how to use all their powers in human form. Shinigami with hollow powers? Ichigo yelped, leaning forward. Chad, Ishida, and Inoue had similar gaping expressions. Urahara nodded. Yes. They call themselves the Vizard. Ichigo frowned deeper, pensively. I see. So if, no, when I manage to beat my inner hollow I will have access to hollow powers. Good. Let's see if I can get more details, Urahara. When you say they have hollow powers, do you mean all of them? Like using Zero, and whatever special abilities their particular hollow has? That would be a question to ask them, but yes, I would presume so from what they've told me, Urahara mused. I do know that they became much stronger than they were before, and they were all lieutenant and captain class Shinigami before being turned into Vizards. Whose side are they on? Ishida asked bluntly. Aizen's, for making them stronger? Or yours, for saving them from Soul Society? Urahara scratched his chin, looking up thoughtfully. Hard to say, he demurred. They are more on their own side than anything else. Would it be possible to recruit them? Ichigo pushed. Or at least get a truce in, So we know for sure they won't side with Aizen when he makes his move? Urahara shook his head negatively. No. They have isolated themselves quite thoroughly. Unless they want to be found, there is no way to talk to them. At least one of their number is exceedingly skilled at Kido and Bakudo, and can create very powerful barriers that make it impossible to enter, even if you knew where they were. How skilled? Ichigo asked, curious. Incredibly so, Urahara said seriously. There is an additional force outside the Gotei 13, known as the Kido Corps. They are made up of former Shinigami Academy students whose ability in Kido were unmatched. The Kido Corps teaches them higher and higher levels of Kido. If you remember Tessai here, Tessai, who was busy with his cleaning duties, nodded at them. Used high-level Bakudo on you while you were regaining your Shinigami powers. He was their captain, 100 years ago. The one with the Vizards now was his lieutenant, and capable of casting level 90 spells without an incantation. I would imagine he's only gotten better in the 100 years since he was banished for receiving hollow powers. Everyone sat back at that news, shocked. Level 90 Kido was incredibly difficult and draining with an incantation, and to be able to use them without was no small feat indeed. If they are so powerful, Chad murmured, why have they stayed hidden? Why have they not tried revenge on Soul Society? Who could stop them? Surprisingly, Ichigo spoke up before Urahara could. Because to a Shinigami, 100 years isn't that long. Before Sandalhat here came up with the 3-day Bankai training technique, it was supposed to take several years to achieve Bankai. Shinigami live for a long, long time unless killed prematurely. Just look at Rukia, an old man Yamamoto. Rukia is at least a century old, and she hasn't even achieved Bankai yet. And she looks our age. Yamamoto must be older than dirt. He is, Urahara agreed, trying not to snicker at Ichigo's choice of words. He founded the Shinigami Academy over 2,000 years ago. Shinigami typically grows stronger very slowly, which is why Soul Society is so intrigued by Ichigo here. What do you mean? Inoue inquired innocently. Urahara smiled. Ichigo's greatest power is his sheer capacity for growth. In the short time since he met Rukia, he's gained Shurikai and Bankai, mastered the flash step from the goddess of flash, Yoruichi herself, and tied in a Zangetsu duel to Kenpachi without his eye patch. He defeated Kuchiki Byakuya himself, the captain of his squad. To be a Shinigami for less than 2 years, and yet be about captain level already, is both awe-inspiring and downright scary. Ichigo scowled and looked away, willing himself not to blush at the glowing praises Urahara were giving him. Let's get back on track. Now that there's no one else in the way, we should focus on what Aizen's planning. Urahara, do you know anything about it? Very little, I'm afraid, Urahara replied with a frown. I can only speculate. With the Hogyoku, Aizen has the ability to break down the barriers between Shinigami and Hollow. I would imagine he has used it to create powerful Arankar, Hollows with Shinigami powers. Why wouldn't he give himself Hollow powers? Yoshida asked, pushing up his glasses as he worked out all the implications. Because with Hollowfication, there is a risk of losing oneself to the Hollow within, Urahara answered gravely. I don't know how the Vizard mastered the powers, and neither does Aizen to the best of my knowledge, so he wouldn't bother. Do we at least know what Aizen plans to do? Ichigo followed up. Not for sure, but Soul Society has suspicions that he plans to manufacture a special key that unlocks the dimension where the royal family lives. How would one go about doing that? Chad questioned. Urahara was silent for a moment. The king's key is manufactured by gathering 100,000 souls in half a spirit mile of land that has an unusually high amount of spirit particles, and then sacrificing them all. I'm sure you all know where that is. Karakura Town, Ichigo breathed, turning pale. Or possibly Soul Society, Ishida pointed out. Provided that he can subdue the Shinigami who threaten him, he could use Soul Society, which is made up entirely of spirit particles. No man could take on all of Soul Society alone, Chad Timbertone put in. He wouldn't have to, if he had an army of Arankar, Inoue finished somberly. Urahara-san, is there a way to destroy the Hogyoku? Urahara shook his head no. I tried many times. My final solution was to hide it in Rukia's soul and have her use one of my special Jugai to drain her power, and thusly the Hogyoku's, over time until it no longer existed. But as we all know, that failed when Aizen recovered it. But my powers, I could do it. Inoue countered strongly. I wouldn't be destroying it, but rejecting its very existence. As if in response to her strengthened will about this matter, her hairpins, which held her powers, glowed for a moment. You could, Urahara admitted, but first you'd have to get close to it, which is nigh impossible at this point. Before you can do that, we need to retrieve it. Then we need to train, Chad mused quietly, but his voice echoed in the quiet room. Train to beat them. No, Urahara denied. Grow stronger, strong enough to protect Karakura town. You are this town's protectors. If you leave and go to Hueco Mundo to fight Aizen, nothing would stop Aizen from destroying Karakura town while you are gone. Let Soul Society handle Aizen. Ichigo snorted. Soul Society couldn't even stop him from leaving while he was there, on their territory. What makes you think Soul Society can stop Aizen on his own turf, protected by powerful Arrancar? Because his Zanpakuto has a major weakness, Urahara explained with a slight smile on his face. Oh? Ishida leaned in. What is it? Aizen's Zanpakuto grants him the power to put anyone under hypnosis, Urahara began. But true hypnosis requires one crucial element, trust. That is why he was so successful in his escape. Everyone trusted him. No one thought him a villain until they had already been put under his Zanpakuto's hypnosis. As no one in Soul Society trusts him anymore, and without Aizen repeatedly releasing his Zanpakuto to replenish the hypnosis, Aizen's hold over them is breaking as time goes on, if it hasn't completely broken already. So what keeps Aizen from putting them under hypnosis when they attack? Ichigo asked, slightly confused. Urahara tipped his hat at him. That's where it gets tricky. Without being the wielder, it is impossible to know his Zanpakuto's true limits, but I would imagine the stronger the opponent's will and distrust, the more Ryatsu it takes for Aizen to fool that opponent, especially when said opponent realizes he's under hypnosis. Therefore, multiple captain-level opponents should theoretically be able to wear Aizen down, especially if they do not actually see Aizen's release, which is, from Aizen's own mouth, what triggers the hypnosis abilities. However, we do not know Aizen's Bankai, so care must be taken to kill him before he has a chance. Actually, Soifun would be an excellent match for him with her Shurkai. She is fast, stealthy, and can kill in 2 stabs in the same place, regardless of Aizen's physical defense. Ichigo relaxed. Good. For once, sounds like Soul Society's on top of things. After having us handle Rukia's execution and the Bount, I was beginning to wonder if they were slipping. Ishida looked pained. Urahara-san, do you know of a way to restore my Quincy powers? I'm afraid not. Your father might, however. He is a powerful Quincy himself, though he has apparently given them up so he can focus on his hospital, Urahara suggested. Ishida frowned. I'd rather not. Is there no chance my powers may return eventually? Urahara shook his head negatively. I see I will need to do some research then. What about Chad and me? Inoue asked. Do you have any ideas on how to train us? Urahara sighed. Actually, Orihime-chan, I'd rather you keep a low profile. If Aizen catches wind of your true power, he will try to capture you and use you to aid him. You may train here if you wish, however. You and Chad can fight each other and push each other higher. Chad, I would suggest you try to unlock your next level of power. Given your current manifestation, I would imagine your left arm is next, but that is pure conjecture at this point. Chad nodded mutely. Ichigo silently came to a decision. He stood, walked over to still cleaning Tessai, and bowed slightly, at about a 45-degree angle. Tessai-san. I have learned Shurkai and Bankai. My specialty is in Zanjutsu, and my Hakuda, hand-to-hand combat, is quite strong as well. However, I find myself deficient in one of the crucial arts of Shinigami, that of Kido. I have a limited control over my own Ryatsu beyond what is needed for flash steps, and my Getsuga Tensho. I cannot even keep my Ryatsu from leaking in large quantities in my everyday life, which makes stealth impossible for me, Ichigo admitted. I realize you are the captain of the Kido Corps. I may be out of line, but I am in need of a teacher. Will you teach me? He bowed lower, in respect of the man. Ishida's jaw dropped. Nor was his the only one. Chad and Inoue's mouths were also agape. KK Kurosaki. What are you doing? Ichigo turned his head to scowl at Ishida, noticing out of the corner of his eye that Tessai had stopped cleaning. What's it look like, Ishida? I have recognized a weakness of mine, and I'm trying to fix it before someone kills me. I might have Rukia beat in terms of Hakuda and Zangetsu, but she could kick my ass incredibly easily. All she would have to do is a simple Bakuda one, sigh. The time it'd take me to break out using sheer strength would be enough for her to trap me with one of her dances or hit me with a high-level hideout. What if another Shinigami goes rogue? What if Aizen, or one of his subordinates come by? Ishida reddened. I got that part, but you never bow to anyone. Oh. Ichigo sighed. Tessai-sen was captain of the Kido Corps. I have wrongly insulted this establishment before, and he kept from blasting me to smithereens, even though he could have quite easily as a response to my insulting his skills. He is strong, and would probably destroy me in a fight if we were both to go all out. Therefore he deserves my respect. What about me, Ichigo? Urahara said, amused. I am stronger than you, and even returned your Shinigami powers to you, and enabled your rescue of Rukia through my special Bankai training method. Why do you not respect me by that logic? Ichigo stopped bowing to Tessai and faced Urahara directly. I do respect your abilities. I just don't respect you, Ichigo said bluntly. You were willing to sacrifice one of my precious comrades, a person who trusted you to help her regain her powers through a normal Jugai, in order to get rid of something you created. You didn't even ask her permission. You could have done it to yourself 100 years ago and ended this problem before we were even born, sacrificing your own powers instead of Rukia's. You didn't even talk to Inoue and Rukia about it when Inoue gained her powers of rejection and could have solved the problem before Rukia was taken to be executed by Soul Society. His voice rose as his arguments became vehement. But then Ichigo paused, reconsidering. But you have gone out of your way to help when you didn't have to, and you did help me gain the power I needed. For that you have my thanks. Perhaps in time, I will come to respect you. Urahara tipped his hat at Ichigo. I see. Perhaps in time, he acknowledged cheerfully. Ichigo nodded and turned back towards Tessai, who was looking at him directly. Ichigo met his gaze readily. A few moments later, Tessai seemed to have found what he was looking for. Kurosaki Ichigo, Tessai rumbled, you have expressed a wish to become my student and learn Kido. Before I make my decision on whether to accept, I must know this. Are you willing to follow my orders, whatever they may be, without rebellion? Ichigo did not answer immediately. So long as they do not cause unnecessary harm to my friends, he answered finally, I will follow your orders. That is acceptable, Tessai boomed. Your training shall begin here after school tomorrow. Ichigo bowed, ignoring the growing cackle of the hollow within him. Thank you, Tessai-sensei. Soon after, Ichigo and his friends left, going their separate ways. Inoue had offered to help Ishida research how to regain his Quincy powers, but Ishida had politely rejected her offer, telling Inoue that Ishida's father already disapproved, and he'd rather aggravate him by bringing a non-Quincy to see the private library. With that, everyone had split up to go home. I gain all the powers you do, King. Even Kido. All you are doing is making the fight harder for yourself. Ichigo's hollow reminded him shortly after the others were out of sight. Then we shall fight for control tonight, Ichigo replied grimly as he reversed course back to Urahara's. Wait until we get to the secret underground training area so we are not disturbed. If I win, I stay the king, and you begin teaching me some of your hollow powers. If you win, you become the king, and I don't try to fight back for at least a week. Agreed? An interesting offer, King. I'll give you a counteroffer. If you win, you stay king and I teach you some of my powers. If I win, I become king and you'll lend your power along with mine to whatever I do. We'll fight once every 2 weeks for control. I'll only agree to that if you go to Hueco Mundo for the duration that you're in control. Hollows grow stronger by eating other hollows, right? Win-win situation for you. Maybe you'll become a Jillian or a Juches. Ichigo could positively feel his hollow self's grin. Ichigo. What a surprise, Urahara greeted, beckoning Ichigo in, though he didn't look surprised at all. Cut the crap, Urahara, Ichigo said shortly, stepping inside. I think you have a pretty good idea why I'm here. Urahara never lost his smile but tipped his head, looking a bit more mysterious in the process. You mean your inner hollow problem? This confirmed Ichigo's suspicions. You knew, he said shortly, no longer having any doubts. You knew from the moment I emerged from that pit with my Shinigami powers and that mask. Indeed I did. In fact, I counted on it, Urahara confirmed. The hollow would protect you while you gained strength, and when the time came, I have every confidence you will be able to master using its power, becoming strong enough to defeat Aizen in my worst-case scenario. Your worst-case scenario? Ichigo repeated. Yes. The one where Soul Society fails utterly and Aizen manages to take over Soul Society entirely. You are the ace in the hole, so to speak, Urahara confessed. The Vizard, as I said, are their own group, and as much as I would like, I cannot count on them. Your inner hollow problems were meant to lure them out of hiding to train you and add to their ranks, thereby training you and making you even stronger. I know you wouldn't let your friends in Soul Society die. Not all those innocents who would be doubtlessly brought into the war. Ichigo clenched his fists. Damn it. You're right about that. I wouldn't let innocents be brought into this war, and I'd do anything to save my friends. But I don't need the Vizard. My inner hollow and I are going to be fighting for control of my body tonight, so we have need of your underground training room. Indeed? Urahara seemed slightly taken aback by that revelation. Are you sure that's wise? Don't you want to wait until you can be trained by those who have mastered their hollows? What makes you think that the Vizard have any other way to control their hollows? Ichigo bit out. Hollows are creatures of instinct and are constantly battling to get stronger, to prove their supremacy. Therefore, the only way to make a hollow respect you is to beat it down, again and again until it gets the message. Well said. Maybe this will be a good fight after all. Hollow Ichigo cackled. Urahara slumped. That is what my own research into Hollowfication and my few encounters with the Vizard have led me to believe as well. I had hoped never mind. You can use the training basement. Thank you. Ichigo began striding over to the trapdoor. He vaguely heard Urahara request Tessai come with them. With that, he opened the trapdoor and quickly climbed down the ladder, followed by Tessai and Urahara. Having fetched his Shinigami badge earlier, Ichigo slammed it against his own chest, shooting himself out of his body. Tessai-sensei, take care of my body, will you? Tessai merely nodded, picking up Ichigo's body and moving it well away. What are you doing, Ichigo? Fighting my hollow for control of my body, Ichigo explained quickly. If I win, great. If I don't, let my hollow go. We'll fight again in 2 weeks' time, and he's promised to keep to Hueco Mundo in the meantime. Ichigo, what will happen to you out here while you're fighting your inner hollow? Urahara asked nervously. I'm not sure. If I go berserk, hit me with a few high-level bakudo, Ichigo suggested with a shrug. Just try not to kill me. Understood, Urahara agreed. Ichigo nodded. He took a deep breath. Ready. He closed his eyes, reached inside, and pulled himself into his mindscape. Ichigo opened his eyes to find himself back in his inner world, on one of the numerous sideways skyscrapers. Across from him, in the same casual stance, was Hollow Ichigo. Took you long enough, Ichigo, the Hollow said, but he didn't look annoyed. If anything, he looked excited. Ichigo nodded seriously. He squashed down his fear of the Hollow. He'd had enough of being afraid. Instead, he did what he'd done with Kenpachi, Byakuya, and the various Banto. He focused on the immediate goal, and his reasons for fighting. I fight for my friends, to protect them. I need to beat this twisted version of me. If I don't beat it, he'll have control, and I won't be here to protect them. Filled with determination, Ichigo drew his Zanpakuto. If possible, the Hollow's grin grew even wider, and its yellow eyes were practically afire in bloodlust. Let's have some fun! A second later they met, their twin Zangetsu, Ichigo's black one, and Hollow Ichigo's white one, clashing. It became a dance of death, slashing and blocking, dodging and countering. Hollow Ichigo began to laugh maniacally, apparently having the time of his life. He glimpsed Ichigo's determined face and laughed harder for a second. Why so serious, Ichigo? Get that chip off your shoulder and enjoy yourself. Almost against his will, Ichigo was starting to do just that. Sometime after the Zanpakuto had begun clashing, Ichigo had started relying more on his instincts than trying to see where his hollow self was striking next. Against someone who had, for all intents and purposes, the same amount of strength and power as oneself, there was no time to think and reason, only act and react. Only instinct would decide the winner. This fact, Ichigo knew from years growing up, and it was only reinforced by his fights with those stronger than himself. Slowly, Ichigo embraced that instinct. It was working, and Ichigo could sense that he and his hollow were on a more equal level. But there was another effect, feeling adrenaline running through his veins, knowing deep in the fiber of his being that he was facing his hardest challenge yet. Relying more and more on his instinct, Ichigo was beginning to feel the fire within. That primal lust for battle, to grow stronger and fight for its own sake. He mostly quenched that fire in the rain a long time ago, when his mother died, keeping only the embers so he could protect his friends, but it seemed the embers had gained fuel, and the fire was growing once more. Ichigo smirked. Maybe I am enjoying myself. I just don't show it as much as you, adrenaline junkie. He slashed at his hollow, and as expected, met the white Zangetsu in return. At that moment, Ichigo released the energy he'd built up. Getsuga Tensho. A large blue wave of energy emerged from Ichigo's Zanpakuto, slamming into hollow Ichigo's version of Zangetsu, and throwing him back into another skyscraper, creating a small crater in the process. Not bad, hollow Ichigo admitted with a large smile. What do you say we kick things up a notch? He held Zangetsu out in front of him with his right hand, his left gripping his right bicep. Zangetsu's cloth flowed around his arm. Ichigo felt his excitement build as he recognized the stance and assumed the same one. Why not? Ban dash. Ki, they bellowed together, and twin explosions of energy surrounded them both. 5 minutes ago. With Ichigo's living body safely out of the way, Ichigo was still standing motionless, his eyes dimmed as he entered his inner world. What do you think, Urahara Dano? Tessai questioned. Urahara Kisuke could feel a rapidly growing sense of foreboding. I don't like this, something's about to happen. A pulse of sheer Ryatsu boomed from Ichigo's body a mere second later, coinciding with when hollow Ichigo and Ichigo crossed blades. The pulse blew back everything not directly tied to the ground, excluding Urahara and Tessai. They watched in horror as in seconds, the left side of Ichigo's face was covered by a mask, white with 3 red tribal-looking markings originating from the eye hole, and his almost permanent scowl was replaced by a monstrous grin. The whites of his eyes were quickly infected and overtaken by black, and the blues of the iris became the amber of a hollows. Tessai. Yes sir, Urahara Dano. Get him in position and I'll bind him. Urahara's cane transformed into his Zanpakuto. Awaken, Beneheim. He had a feeling he'd need the extra boost of his Shurikai soon enough. He released his Zanpakuto not a moment too soon, as the partially hollowified Ichigo rushed him, aiming for a stab with Zangetsu. Fast. Urahara realized before flash stepping away. The horrible form of Ichigo merely changed directions and appeared in front of Urahara almost quick enough to cut him, but Urahara flash stepped away again. The berserker Ichigo came at Urahara from the side this time, but Urahara was prepared. Sing, Urahara murmured quietly, Beneheim. A crimson shield appeared in front of him, protecting Urahara on all sides as it formed an oval shape around him. Ichigo struck it and stayed in one spot, trying to break that shield. Now! Urahara commanded. Yes, sir! Bakuto 99 Kin Seal! Tessai bellowed. Out of nowhere, 2 spiritual fabrics with various runes appeared, snagging Ichigo's arms and pulling them behind his back before wrapping around his body, dragging him to the ground before rolling out more in an X fashion. Large metallic slabs appeared, apparently made of Tessai's Ryatsu, and a dozen each landed on each unfurled part of the spiritual fabric, effectively tying the hollowified Ichigo to the ground. It happened so fast, the monster had no chance. Urahara sighed, releasing the shield, but keeping Beneheim in her Shurikai state as he walked over to Tessai. Good thing you're so good at Bakuto, he said gratefully. Yes it is, Urahara Dano. Tessai agreed, breathing out before viewing the berserker form of his would-be student. But I don't think we're done yet. I agree. Warily, they watched the newly quiet Ichigo. They had a few minutes before another Ryatsu pulse, several times stronger than the last, erupted from Ichigo, whose face was no longer in that fearsome grin, but almost seemed confused. Tessai, before he breaks free, please add another binding spell to him, Urahara suggested. Yes sir, Urahara Dano. Bakuto 75, Gochuteken, Quintet of Iron Pillars. As if the spiritually binding fabrics were not enough, 5 enormous towers of iron emerged from the sky, chained together at the top. One each landed on Ichigo's legs and arms, and the last between Ichigo's shoulder blades. However, even the 2 Bakuto together threatened to not be enough. The pillars started shaking, their chains rattling. The spirit fabric was slowly starting to tear. "Oh dear," Urahara murmured. Famous last words. The fabric tore, and the pillars fell behind Ichigo as he slowly stood up. His appearance was quickly changing again. In the exposed part of Ichigo's chest, a gush of white foam spurted as his face tilted upwards. The foam melted away and revealed a hole going all the way clear through Ichigo's back, a hollow hole. Zangetsu, who had been in Shirkai, had changed into Bankai state, changing from the elegant oversized cleaver to the Japanese long sword. Urahara suddenly remembered just what Ichigo's Bankai allowed him to do. Compression of Ryatsu, giving Ichigo incredible speed and strength, not to mention how long he can keep it active. He's gone Bankai. "We're screwed, aren't we?" Urahara continued. More famous last words. "Perhaps, Urahara Dano. But we must have faith that Ichigo will finish soon," Tessai murmured, preparing himself. "Perhaps the greater form of Bakudo 99, Bankin, Great Seal, will restrain him long enough for Ichigo to win." "This won't be as easy as last time," Urahara stated with a sigh. "I really wish Ichigo had waited for the Vizard. They are more numerous and undoubtedly know how to handle this better than we do." Nevertheless, he readied Beneheim. "Come, Ichigo. Let me show you how far you have yet to go." Within Ichigo's inner world, the explosions died down to show Ichigo and Hollow Ichigo, both of them in their Bankai outfits. From the waist to his ankles, Ichigo was covered by the same garment he wore outside of Bankai. It was held up around his waist by a simple rope tied into a knot. Ichigo's torso and arms were garbed in a black, ankle-length, long-sleeved thin coat that closed at his chest an inch or two above his waistline. The coat's ends were jagged as it fluttered in the breeze. He wielded Tensai Zangetsu, his black Zanpakuto in Bankai form. Hollow Ichigo wore the same outfit, only completely white. Even his version of Tensai Zangetsu was white. Only the underside of his coat, as well as belt, was black. "You ready, Ichigo?" Ichigo scoffed. "Bring it on, mister, I love wearing blinding white." Hollow Ichigo grinned as they clashed, their increased speed and strength evident even as both Ichigos never lost eye contact. "So says the man who has a fetish for black." Hollow Ichigo returned the taunt as they held in a deadlock, each trying to overpower the other. "Wasn't black supposed to be the evil color?" "It's also the color of mourning," Ichigo replied, breaking the deadlock himself to spin around the blade and managing to land a lucky slash into Hollow Ichigo's side. It was a shallow wound though, and he knew their fight was still on as Hollow Ichigo flash-stepped behind him and attempted a slash of his own. Ichigo dodged to the side, sacrificing a few strips of cloth from his coat to evade the blow. "And I'm certainly mourning your color blindness. Seriously, I think I'm going snowblind." Hollow Ichigo laughed insanely even as he lunged at Ichigo, who blocked, bringing them into yet another deadlock. "Point to you, Ichigo. I can safely say no matter who wins, I'll be satisfied knowing you can enjoy a fight like this. I never thought you had it in you to banter with such consequences if you lose." "Bah!" Ichigo smirked. "Do you know how hard it is to banter while you're trying to fight someone stronger than yourself? Never works, 'cause banter loses power when you're obviously losing." But when it's an even match like this, Ichigo, through a twist of his wrist, managed to deeply scratch the back of Hollow Ichigo's hand, loosening the Hollow's grip on Tensai Zangetsu long enough for Ichigo to disarm him, sending the white Zanpakuto flying up. "Even I can have fun!" Predictably, Hollow Ichigo flew towards it to retrieve before Ichigo could do anything, only to hear those dreaded words. "Getsuga Tensho." An enormous plume of black energy, with red flickering here and there, had been unleashed through Ichigo's sword and slammed into Hollow Ichigo, sending him flying through 2.5 skyscrapers. Hollow Ichigo grinned widely as he got up, staring at the hovering form of Ichigo as he ignored the new cuts in his coat and skin, as well as the bleeding from his lip. "Pretty good, Ichigo, but you forget. I was the first one to use Getsuga Tensho in Bankai form. You have no idea of its true potential. You're nothing but a copycat." "Ha! That coming from you. You couldn't even bother to look differently from me in any way but color," Ichigo countered. "But alright, let's test our Getsugas against each other." In reply, Hollow Ichigo flash-stepped up to Ichigo and slammed blades with them. In unison, they cried, "Getsuga Tensho!" In the real world, Urahara was sweating lightly. Ichigo was getting more and more hollowified as time went on, and he kept getting faster and stronger. Ichigo now appeared as some lizard-human crossbreed. He had a very long, white tail whose last foot and a half was colored a dark crimson. His shoulders had 4 spikes each, resembling almost a frill. His skin had turned completely white, with an ornate wavy pattern going down each leg and arm, the same color as his tail end. The top part of Ichigo's Shinigami outfit was completely shredded, as was the part covering his right leg. Only enough to cover his modesty and his left leg now remained, which allowed everyone to see how large Ichigo's muscles had become under the Hollow's influence. The mask Ichigo wore had grown to cover the majority of his face, only his right eye being left. It had gained another 2 red stripes, this time under the left eye hole. One of the last vestiges of Ichigo left was his spiky orange hair, which still poked out around the mask from where it hadn't melded with the back of his head yet. To top it all off, clenched tightly in this hollowified Ichigo's right hand was Tensai Zangetsu, which was giving off a sinister-feeling black Ryatsu. Sing, Benihime! Urahara was just in time, as the monster struck Benihime's blood mist shield technique, protecting Urahara, who flash-stepped away immediately. Sing, Benihime! Urahara swung his shuriken this time horizontally at Ichigo this time, and instead creating a shield, Benihime unleashed a wave of crimson energy, similar to Ichigo's Getsuga Tensho. It was shaped like a crescent in the direction Urahara had swung, but also had spikes of energy appearing at equidistant points from the center having the largest spike. The ends of the crescent curved around Ichigo, making the attack look, all in all, like a blood-stained tiara. Ichigo was hit dead on, and was sent flying, landing on his back and skidding. But even so, Urahara noticed that where Ichigo had been pierced, more foam-like substance appeared, quickly staunching and repairing the wound. High-speed regeneration, he realized. Tessai. Before he gets up. Urahara flash-stepped to Ichigo, only to flash-step immediately away when Ichigo launched some sort of white flesh attack at him. Nevertheless, Urahara had managed to buy enough time. Bakudo 99, Bankin! Tessai roared. First song. A testament to Tessai's incredible mastery of Bakudo, an extremely wide and thick spiritual fabric emerged from behind him and rushed to Ichigo, who tried to escape. However, the fabric caught Ichigo's arm, and having caught him, wrapped him from head to toe in the fabric, weakening Ichigo greatly and slamming him to the ground, unrolling much like Bakudo 99, Kin. Second song. Again, much like Bakudo 99, Kin, slabs slammed down onto the fabric, reinforcing them. However, these slabs were thicker, taller, and more numerous. There were 20 for each stretch of fabric. Ichigo was struggling, and slowly making progress to get out. Both Urahara and Tessai could hear the fabric starting to rip. To add power, Tessai decided to include the incantation to the final part. Final song, Bankin Taiho, Great Seal of 10,000 Forbiddings. An enormous metallic cube materialized above Ichigo and slammed down upon him, and despite Ichigo struggling, there was no more sounds of ripping. Urahara and Tessai sighed in unison, glad they had finally immobilized the beastly Ichigo. The Vizard must be very powerful indeed, Tessai commented. Urahara nodded with a small sound of agreement. Such power, combined with practice and skill, I can almost see why Soul Society is afraid of them and tried to have them executed. You could say the same about most Bankai, Tessai countered. I did say almost. Urahara sighed, resealing Benihime into her cane form. Yes, this wasn't so bad. Even though Ichigo had gone Bankai, this mindless form of him had no idea how to use it beyond stab and slash. I didn't have to go Bankai myself, which is nice. He tipped his head thoughtfully. I wonder if the inner hollow can progress like normal hollows. Can a Vizard eat hollows to increase its power? The scientist in me wants to know, but I'm afraid to find out how will mastery over one's hollow increase a Vizard's skill. Urahara and Tessai fell silent then, watching the struggling Ichigo, fearful that he had lost to the hollow within. Ichigo's inner world. Both Ichigo's swords were engulfed in the dark flame of Getsuga Tensho, struggling to overpower each other, as the Ichigos poured their power into their attacks. They were as two unstoppable forces clashing against each other, and it created a black maelstrom of Ryatsu around them, with Ichigo and his hollow still in that deadlock, Tensai Zangetsu against Tensai Zangetsu. Then Ichigo had an idea, a strange one, but his instinct told him it'd work. Keeping one hand his own Tensai Zangetsu, Ichigo grabbed the end of his hollows and forced his will down it. This black flame flowed down the white Zanpakuto like electricity down a wire, and Hollow Ichigo let go, jumping backwards before the flame could reach his hand, a look of uncertainty on his face. Is my sword? Ichigo finished, now wielding two pitch-black Tensai Zangetsus. And I. Before Hollow Ichigo could move, he was stabbed through chest by both of the Zanpakuto Ichigo wielded. King! Despite having lost, Hollow Ichigo grinned. Well done, Ichigo. As promised, I shall start to teach you how to use the hollow powers my presence gives you. He started to fade away. Just remember we fight again, in 2 weeks' time. Hollow Ichigo was almost completely faded. And thanks for the great fight, and then he was gone, leaving only Ichigo. Ichigo looked at the second Tensai Zangetsu he held with minor confusion. It hadn't disappeared when the hollow had. Now what? Since I defeated the hollow, old man Zangetsu should be back in control. Zangetsu. You here? Indeed I am, Ichigo. Ichigo spun around and was very relieved to see the familiar face of his Zanpakuto spirit. Zangetsu was once again crouching on a flagpole sticking up from a nearby skyscraper. Ichigo approached him. Zangetsu, why didn't this disappear when the hollow did? Ichigo held out the second Tensai Zangetsu, the one he'd stolen from his hollow. Zangetsu looked over with slight interest, which was possibly the most emotion he'd shown in the entire time Ichigo had known him. Because you claimed it as your sword. It seems you have a new ability, Ichigo. What, to steal people's Zanpakuto? Ichigo was horrified at the thought. What if he accidentally stole some of his allies' Zanpakuto on accident? No. Zangetsu looked almost amused at the thought. Though company would be nice. Ichigo stared. Did you just crack a joke? The world is ending. Zangetsu merely smirked, much the same way Ichigo had a tendency to. No, Ichigo, your power is now to be able to wield both of them at once. However, he looked seriously at Ichigo. Be careful. It has been some time since you have hurt yourself using it, but Bankai is extremely stressful on the body. The second Bankai will grant you even higher levels of speed and power, but it comes with a price. Your body will rip itself apart over time. Ichigo nodded. Thank you, Zangetsu. But how do I summon the second sword? That is something you must discover for yourself. And with that, Ichigo woke up, finding himself in total darkness, with something incredibly heavy on his back. He couldn't even move, and he could feel his arms bound to his body. Well, good thing I'm not terribly claustrophobic. Urahara! Tessai-sensei! Let me out! Ki, release! Tessai's voice boomed, and suddenly Ichigo found himself on the ground, Tensai Zangetsu beside him. There was only one, thankfully. Ichigo had no desire to explain having two of them, with the bright light of Urahara's underground training area shining down at him. Ichigo got up and brushed himself off. Lying beside him was a mask. He picked it up. It was white, with 3 long, wide red tribal marks reaching upwards from the left eye hole, and 2 more reaching to the side from underneath the same eye hole. It felt very brittle, but Ichigo could feel the power within. Without a second thought, Ichigo crushed the mask, letting it dissolve into Ryatsu. He somehow knew how to summon it back if he needed. Ichigo walked over to Urahara and Tessai. He glanced around at the nearby area. There was a lot of destruction. I take it my body went berserk while I was busy? You could say that, Urahara agreed easily. Ichigo turned to Tessai. Sensei, which Bakuto was I trapped in? I couldn't move or gather my Ryatsu at all, so it must have been extremely high level. Tessai nodded. You were trapped in Bakuto 99 Bankin. Ichigo blinked. Such a high level. It was necessary. Your berserk form broke out of a combination of Bakuto 99, Kin and Bakuto 75, Gochuteken. Ichigo cocked his head to the side. Wait, I thought you said Bakuto 99 was Bankin, not Kin. Kin is the first part of Bankin, Tessai explained shortly. Ah, thank you, Sensei. Wait, did you say my berserk form broke out of 2 extremely high-level Bakuto at once? Yes, it did. How? Tessai adjusted his black-tinted glasses. A combination of immense spiritual pressure to weaken the Bakuto, and the brute strength of a powerful hollow to finish the job. Color me impressed, Ichigo murmured. Don't be, Tessai advised. Your berserk self was strong, but lacked most of your fighting skills. It was extremely easy to trap. Do not let yourself into that form in a fight. No matter how strong you are, you need intelligence to use it properly. Ichigo nodded. Yes, sensei. Ichigo, I find myself curious. I have never witnessed a Vizard actually use his or her hollow powers, Urahara confessed. Would you please give us a demonstration? Ichigo nodded. He'd been looking forward to seeing how much stronger he'd gotten as well. Keeping up the Bankai state, Ichigo spread his legs to a little beyond shoulder width, hunching over slightly. As Tensai Zangetsu was in his right hand, he brought his left hand up over his face, tensing up his fingers so it looked like he was about to tear the air in front of his face. Black energy with hints of red trailed from his fingers as he dragged his hand through the air, and his mask materialized on his face as his hand moved over it. When he finished, he had to restrain the urge to gasp. He felt so incredibly strong. I feel incredible, Ichigo announced, noticing his voice in this state was duly layered, with his inner hollow's voice speaking at the same time as his own. It sounded fairly creepy, even to Ichigo's own ears. How about a demonstration of your Getsuga Tensho then? Urahara requested eagerly. Ichigo nodded, turned away and raised his Zanpakuto. Getsuga Tensho! He yelled, swinging Tensai Zangetsu with all his might. An absolutely enormous crescent of black Ryatsu erupted from the sword's wake, speeding into and through several of the boulders, obliterating them without slowing down. It finally crashed to a stop a long distance away. Urahara whistled. Ichigo, I think I'll have to ask you not to do that here again unless you're willing to help reconstruct this place. All of a sudden, Ichigo's mask shattered, and he fell to his knees, panting. Why? He huffed. What the hell? It seems you have a time limit on how long you can use it, Urahara surmised. You held the transformation for about 9 seconds. You'll need to work on that if you want to maintain the advantage. Ichigo nodded, agreeing. After several more breaths, he felt fairly recovered. I should have known that such power had a price, he muttered. All power has a price, Tessai boomed. Whether it is time spent training, or something else, something must always be sacrificed to gain power. Ichigo nodded, knowing that particular lesson quite well. He had sacrificed his old life to gain Shinigami powers. He had sacrificed his time, blood and sweat to gain strength. He had even sacrificed the prospect to ever not have to fight, in exchange for his Hollow's cooperation. The ability to use a second Tensai Zangetsu would have a price as well, the price of his body's well-being. He thanked Urahara and Tessai once more before returning to his mortal body and going home. However, despite how exhausted he was, he found himself awake and wondering, Shinigami Hollow Vizard Arenkar, we all seek power, whatever our reasons. Some Shinigami seek power to protect their comrades. Ichigo recalled his own training, to protect and save Rukia. Others to fulfill their personal goals. Ichigo thought of Aizen with a scowl. Hollows eat other hollows for strength, so they might avoid being eaten themselves. Ichigo looked out the window and felt a sense of foreboding. What do the Vizard and Arenkar grow stronger for? And what price do they pay for power? Ichigo froze. He was being watched, he could feel it. He looked out the window, and there, on a rooftop, was a blond, skinny man whose bone-straight hair reached his shoulders. He was wearing the school uniform of the school Ichigo went to, but what drew Ichigo's attention was the white mask on his face, with a white hood over the back of his head. The Vizard gestured for Ichigo to come outside, and after a moment, he decided to. Pressing his Shinigami badge to his chest, Ichigo left his body in bed and climbed outside in his Shinigami form, his hand on Zangetsu, just in case. What business does a Vizard have with me? Ichigo asked neutrally. He'd felt firsthand the sort of power a Vizard could have, and he would rather not make an enemy of one, especially as he hadn't mastered the mask yet. The Vizard started, surprised. He pulled off his mask, and gave Ichigo a bewildered expression. Eh? How do you know what we call ourselves? Urahara mentioned you in passing when he was describing how Aizen has mostly likely used the Hugyoku to create Arenkars. Ichigo lied smoothly. I pressed him on it, looking for allies against Aizen. He explained that you were banished from Soul Society at the same time he was, and that Aizen is the one responsible for your having hollow powers. I see. He paused for a minute. I'm Hirako Shinji, Vizard. Kurosaki Ichigo, Shinigami representative. But I think you already knew that, Ichigo said pointedly. Shinji nodded. Your Ryatsu, it reminds me, and other Vizard of our own. It has traces of hollow Ryatsu. What of it? Ichigo asked, not bothering to deny it. I've been asked to bring you to our compound, to train you and help you control your inner hollow, Shinji invited. Ichigo frowned. To reveal the mask or no, I should get more information first. Let's say I go with you. What would happen then, and how long would I be training with you? That really depends on you, Kurosaki, Shinji stated bluntly. How quickly you learn will determine how long you stay. As for what would happen, we would help you bury your inner hollow far enough down it can't interfere, and then we train you in drawing out and keeping out the mask you don to access the hollow's power. Ichigo made a show of looking interested but trying to hide it. Before I can join you, I need to know your priorities. The Shinigami serve the Godai 13 in the interests of preserving the current status quo, though I'm not sure what Yamamoto-ji wants. Aizen is out there somewhere doing Kami knows what for some obscure purpose. I just want to keep my friends in this town safe. What do the Vizard want? Shinji smiled deviously. Why do you ask? Are you concerned? Ichigo gave the Vizard a serious look. You've been secluded, presumably training, for over 100 years. I think some concern is merited. You don't really have a choice, Kurosaki Ichigo, Shinji countered, his smile falling from his face. Without our training, your inner hollow will take over and consume you. You've felt him before, I'm sure. Touching on your consciousness, getting stronger. I'll bet he's even taken over once or twice before you recovered. It will only get worse. You say you want to protect your friends in this town. If you don't come with me, and soon, you'll be their greatest threat. Hollows, as you probably well know, go after loved ones first. If nothing else, I'll know where they are. Ichigo paused, and then nodded, darkening his normal scowl further, to show his dislike of not being answered. Fine, but one of these days I'm going to want an answer. Shinji nodded, acknowledging Ichigo's demand. That's fair. And if something my friends can't handle happens, I reserve the right to leave and help them, Ichigo added. I expected nothing less. Shinji turned to leave. Come, I'll show you the warehouse we stay at. Ichigo looked over his shoulder to glance at his body, and saw Khan, the mod soul he'd stuffed into a lion teddy bear, at the window, watching. All right, Ichigo agreed, but I'll need to come back so I can arrange things without my family freaking. Fine, Shinji agreed with a wave of his hand. Now come on. They began jumping from house to house, Ichigo following slightly from the side. So, Hirako, how many of you Vizard are there? Counting me there are 8 of us, Shinji answered absently. With you, there'll be 9. What are they like? Ichigo pressed. You'll get to know them soon enough, but I suppose I should warn you about Hiyori. She's a shrimp, but very violent, and prone to kicking people in the face over the smallest of things, Shinji advised. I'm her victim most of the time, but I do have such fun provoking her, he admitted with a mischievous grin. Ichigo smirked. I know the feeling. One of my friends, Rukia, is a shrimp too, and we insult each other all the time. She smacks me with her notebook when I point out her drawing sucks. Shinji smiled broadly. Good to see a brother in spirit. Pun totally intended. Ichigo groaned as they stopped in front of an abandoned warehouse. That's gotta be the worst I've ever heard. Anything else I should know? Shinji paused and brought his left hand to his chin, looking up in thought. Don't steal Love's manga, don't mess with Kensei, and whatever you do, do not piss off Hachijin. It's hard to do, but you will certainly regret it if you do. Got it, Ichigo acknowledged. Shinji approached the door and stopped with his hand on it. Know this, Kurosaki Ichigo, he said lowly, turning back to face the Shinigami representative. My friends and I are not Shinigami anymore. We stopped being Shinigami the moment they kicked us out of Soul Society. Do not ask us to protect them. Ichigo opened his mouth to protest, but reconsidered. I don't want to antagonize them. They might still be neutral. He nodded. Shinji, satisfied with the response, turned back and opened the door to the warehouse. They entered, and Ichigo took the opportunity to look around. The warehouse was rather Spartan. I'm not surprised, Ichigo mused. Most Shinigami don't seem to need much, and these guys have been focusing on their training. There were 7 others, doing various things. Shinji quickly introduced them. We have a Shota Hachijin over there in the corner. Ichigo glanced, and saw a rather large man wearing an odd-colored tuxedo was meditating and said corner. I would surmise he's the Kido specialist, never seen anyone else meditating, or maybe he's talking to his Zanpakuto? Yadamara Lisa in the chair reading her dirty manga. Her preferred outfit appeared to be a modest sailor-style schoolgirl one, with a skirt and a mostly white shirt over it. The area around her collar was turquoise, clearly highlighted by her dark hair, which was pulled back in a long braid. Dirty manga? Ichigo fought the urge to shake his head in bemusement. If only Dad could see this, he'd have a field day. In that chair over there, Rose. A rather effeminate man with long, wavy blonde hair and a frilly shirt was lightly strumming a few chords on his guitar. He looked up and nodded at Ichigo and Shinji, both of whom nodded back. Muguruma Kensei with the punching bag, Shinji pointed to a tall, athletically muscular man with short cropped off-white hair. Kensei was busy practicing his punches. Ichigo saw where sand was leaking out of it where Kensei's punches connected. Very strong. I'd bet that the punching bag is reinforced with Ryatsu as well. Looks like he takes his training very seriously. Ikawa loves on the couch with his own manga. Ichigo looked, but this manga didn't have the adults-only sign on it. The man had his black hair and a spiked afro, and in combination with the glasses and the green jogging suit, he looked pretty good. He had long sideburns, and a small amount of fuzz on his chin. Maybe trying to grow a goatee? He mentally shrugged. He looks rather relaxed. Kyuna Mishiro's the one in the white bodysuit and green hair. I'm not sure I want to know what she's doing, Shinji deadpanned. Indeed, the girl's hair was so vivid a green that Ichigo was sure she dyed it. Wait, I'm not in any position to talk. My hair's orange, for crying out loud. In any case, Mishiro was pacing back and forth, muttering to herself. What little Ichigo heard made no sense, and he was strongly reminded of Inoue and her odd food combinations. Shinji shrugged and turned to Ichigo. And that's everyone? Ichigo could see the hint of mischievousness in his eyes, and turned around to see an incredibly short blonde with an angry tick above the girl's left eye. Playing along, Ichigo glanced back at Shinji. Then who's the midget? Ichigo noted with an internal grin that the tick had grown quite a bit. Probably some kid who accidentally wandered in, Shinji replied, not even bothering to acknowledge the girl's anger until her right foot managed to catch him right in the face, sending him to the floor. Quick! Ichigo realized. He had barely even seen the girl move. I would need to use Shunpa to keep up with that. How dare you! The girl demanded, kicking Shinji's ribs. I was right there, Baka Shinji. You introduced everyone but me. Her voice rose. And then you pretended I was some stray kid? Another kick. Shinji got up, holding his nose. It was a joke, Hiyori. Besides, you're so small I couldn't see you from behind Kurosaki. Ichigo here. Baka Shinji. Stop going on about my height. It got old over 100 years ago. Can't you come up with anything new? Shinji actually looked up and scratched his chin with a finger. Maika, you react so well to it I couldn't bear to change it, you ugly girl. Hiyori growled and tackled him. Ugly? I'll show you ugly. By the time I'm through with you, your face is gonna look like a freaking blueberry. It'll be so swollen and black and blue. There they go again, Love muttered, turning the page of his manga. Ichigo found he had the perfect opportunity to one-up both the tussling Vizard. Walking over to Love, he made sure to say just loud enough for everyone to hear, you know, it sounds like there's a lot of repressed UAL tension between them. Maybe that's why they fight, hoping for some good make-up. Everyone froze. Even Hiyori, who was about to punch Shinji in the face. The next moment, Ichigo had 2 feet to the face, one each from Shinji and Hiyori. Baka Strawberry, a play on words. Ichigo has more than one meaning. One essentially means protector. Another meaning is strawberry. They yelled together. It's not like that. Ichigo picked himself up and grinned at them. So quick to deny, and you reacted so well in unison. It's like you're in tune with each other. Is anyone else here seeing what I am? The two flushed red when they heard chuckling from Lisa and Love. You might be right, Lisa admitted. Would you like to borrow some of my manga, Shinji? Might give you ideas. Shinji found himself completely caught off guard and gaped like a goldfish for a second. He glanced around and saw that everyone was watching him, except Hiyori, who wore the same expression he did, total confusion. He finally recovered enough to speak coherently. No! I'm not into little whiny brats like her. That broke the tension nicely, as Hiyori was back in her element. says the man who makes faces when he knows he's lost a verbal war. Ichigo smirked. They're just giving me more ammo. Definitely an old married couple, he said loudly. They know each other way too well, push each other's buttons too easily. If they really hated each other, one of them would have killed the other by now. It's been over 100 years of living together, for crying out loud. Bet you anything they don't act like that with other people normally. Kid's got a point, Rose murmured, looking up from his guitar. Hiyori looked betrayed. Rose. What? You only get that pissed off at Shinji, and we all know Shinji does those antics just to get a rise out of you, Love said with a smirk, setting down his manga. This is way better. Love. Shinji exclaimed, scandalized. I think you two would be a cute couple. Mishiro jumped in, walking over and looking at the rapidly blushing pair up and down. Yep. I could see it. Mishiro, don't you even dare trying to set them up, Kensei ordered from across the room, focusing on his punching bag. But why not? Mishiro whined. You need to focus on your training first, Kensei reminded her, iterating it with another swift punch to the bag. Yes. Training. Shinji seized on the topic. Anything to stop them from trying to get me together with Hiyori. Ichigo, let's start your training now. Ichigo finished chuckling and nodded. All right. Now that I'm here, could we go over the process of mastering my hollow? It's simple, Kensei said before Shinji could say anything. He stopped attacking the punching bag and approached Ichigo. First we force you to let your hollow have control, to get a grasp of its power. Then we measure your spiritual energy, make sure you have enough to survive. Finally we make you fight your hollow in your inner world, where it resides. You win, you can pull on its mask and use hollow powers, and it doesn't bother you. You lose, you become a complete hollow, and we kill you. If you win, we give you endurance training on mask usage. That it? Ichigo inquired. In a nutshell, yes, Shinji admitted. I've already done most of that, Ichigo revealed. I won against my hollow. Ee? Came the startled cries from everyone save Hachijin, who was either still meditating or he'd fallen asleep. Prove it! Kensei demanded, an angry expression on his face. Ichigo crouched, summoning his Ryatsu and focusing it to his hand, which he tore across the air in front of his face, materializing his mask. Satisfied? He asked with a self-satisfied smirk underneath the mask. He was shocked when a moment later, he was knocked to the ground and there were 7 Zanpakuto at his neck and mask. And that's a wrap. Hope the fighting scenes weren't too lacking in details. I'm not too good at them. I'm much better at character development. So, Ichigo's gained his mask, and the Vizard are revealed. But Ichigo's now at their mercy, with every Vizard, except Hachijin, holding a sword to his throat and his mask. Hey! What the hell? Ichigo protested. Shut up, Hollow! Give back, Ichigo! Kensei demanded. I am Ichigo, dumbass. Ha ha, hit me with another, Kensei replied sarcastically. Your Ryatsu just skyrocketed, Hollow, far more than any of ours did when we first got our masks. How is it my problem if your hollow powers are not as strong as mine? Besides, I have unnaturally large Ryatsu reserves as a Shinigami. What's to say my hollow powers don't magnify it? Let's prove who's in charge then, Shinji murmured, leaning down and peeling the mask from Ichigo's face. Yes, well done, you took off my mask and kept me from accessing my hollow powers, Ichigo snapped, annoyed. Are you convinced I am who I say I am now? Well, now we know he was in control, Love muttered. But what if it's a plot to get someone on the inside, to betray us and our location? Rose asked. You're not entirely wrong, Ichigo had to admit. He felt the various Zanpakuto begin to cut into his skin. Urahara Kisuke knew I had an inner hollow, and wanted to lure you out so I could be trained by you. I imagine he wants me to convince you to fight Aizen with the Shinigami. Or maybe act as a secondary defense, as my friends and I are supposed to be the first one, just in case Aizen invades here to create the King's Key. I really don't know, he hides quite a bit. Shinji crouched down so he was looking Ichigo in the eyes. You're very forthcoming about him, he said suspiciously. I don't like him very much, Ichigo said honestly. He tried to sacrifice one of my friends to destroy the Hogyoku. Since then he's helped me gain my own Shinigami powers, as well as Bankai. He also helped provide a means to fight the bound. At the same time, he's using me as a final defense against Aizen, which grates on my nerves. I trust him, a new voice rang. Ichigo swiveled his eyes in the direction the voice came from and saw Hachigen stand up and dust himself off. He's been very honest and direct. His reaction since you removed his mask has been violently churning, but in a way that suggests readiness to fight, rather than deception. Besides, love began, sending a sly look Shinji's way. I doubt a spy would point out your crush. I do not have a crush on Hiyori, damn it! Shinji cried in frustration. Regardless, you have a point. He wouldn't make waves and attract attention if he was a spy. And he definitely wouldn't have come with his hollow already mastered. Let him up. A few moments later, Ichigo stood up and stretched. Anything else you need to check before you can trust me? He asked angrily. No, we're good, Mishiro chirped happily. So, how long can you hold onto your mask? Hiyori asked seriously. Not long. Ichigo scowled. Tell us. Hiyori insisted. Ichigo looked away, muttering. What was that? 9 seconds. You happy now? Ichigo bit out. Actually, yes, Love answered. That's about the average we could each hold onto our masks at first, excepting Mishiro. She could hold hers for 15 hours straight on her first try. Okay, I don't feel so bad now, Ichigo admitted. So, this mask endurance training. We have you repeatedly summon your mask and then fight you so your body can get used to wielding so much power, Rose explained. Your adaptation speed, we've found, is slower if the hollow is very powerful. You'll go through the endurance training until you can hold it for an hour, Shinji directed. After that, it'll only get better through experience. How do you measure how powerful the hollow is? Ichigo queried. Well, normally we'd have had to fight your berserk body to find out, Shinji admitted. Got any stories to tell? Ichigo shrugged. Not sure if this means much, but when I was fighting my hollow, my body went berserk and started through Hollowfication. It managed to break out of a combination of Bakudo 99, Kin and Bakudo 75, Gochuteken after we both went Bankai in my inner world. It fell to Bakudo 99, Bankin though. Shinji whistled. Wow, that is rather impressive. What about inside your inner world? We were about the same level, Ichigo confessed. Like I said, he could use Bankai, same as me. Very strong version of my Bankai special attack. I beat it when I stole the Zanpakudo out of his hand and stabbed him with it. You'll have an opportunity to face the berserk form again in 2 weeks, if you want. Kensei blinked. But you already beat your hollow. Why would you need to do it again? We agreed to fight every 2 weeks for control of my body. As long as I win, he'll teach me how to use hollow techniques. If he wins, he goes to Hueco Mundo to evolve as a hollow until I win again, Ichigo explained. The way we saw it, we both get stronger either way, but I'd rather stay in charge. But we can teach you the hollow techniques, Shinji exclaimed, waving his arms around in dismay. Ichigo shook his head. You can teach the generic hollow techniques, like Zero. All the specialties of your individual hollow, you either don't know or discovered on accident. I can't afford to not know, and I can't trust accident. But don't you see? Your hollow's tricked you, Lisa insisted. When your hollow evolves, then he'll become stronger than you, and you'll never win again. You might have a point, Ichigo conceded, but you never know. Besides, Jillians are pretty mindless. I could kick my hollow's ass like that no problem. In any case, I don't have a choice but to fight to grow stronger. Let's drop it and move on to the endurance training. The next morning, Ichigo was exhausted. He'd been summoning his mask all night every time it broke, and he'd only managed to extend the time to 19.5 seconds. Still, it was more than double what he'd been at before. He'd been restricted from Bankai so the Vizard didn't have to release their Zanpakudo to fight him. Ichigo got the impression they didn't really trust him. He couldn't blame them. Ichigo fell to his knees when his mask broke again. 20 seconds even, Hachigen called out, clicking his stopwatch. You got another half second there, Ichigo. Way to go, Berry-tan. Mishiro called out, having been talking to Hachigen animatedly. Keep it up. Just half a second? What is up with you? Hiyori growled from behind her mask. It had been her turn to fight Ichigo this time. She pulled back the mask to glare at him. Baka strawberry. Stop calling me that. Only Rukia can call me that. Ichigo rebuked before he had a chance to think about what he was saying. Catching the sudden knowing look in Shinji's eyes across the way, Ichigo groaned. It's not like that, Shinji. She's one of my best friends. Just like Inoue, Ishida, and Chad. Ah, sweet vengeance, Shinji thought fondly. Really? 'Cause I remember you telling me yesterday how much you enjoyed bantering with her and calling her a midget. You even let her hit you with her notebook after you insult her drawing. He grinned widely, showing off his teeth. Sounds like there's some UL tension there. Ichigo gave him an exasperated look. There's nothing there, Shinji. Would this be the same Rukia who you broke into Soul Society to save from execution? Shinji continued. Ichigo ground his teeth. Yes, I was returning a favor. She gave me the power to save my family from hollows, so I was saving her life. I couldn't just let her die without setting us straight. Besides, even if I was interested, Rukia is a Kuchiki, royalty in Soul Society, and she's over 100 years older than I am. I'm only 15. She definitely wouldn't be interested in me. Like I said, there's nothing there. Summon your mask, Strawberry, Hiyori interrupted, pulling hers back on. You need a lot of work. Ichigo sighed and summoned his mask again, holding Zangetsu in the ready position. They rushed at each other again, with Hiyori barely looking winded. So, is there anyone you're interested in, Ichigo? Lisa asked, turning a page in her perverted manga. Ichigo blinked behind his mask before parrying another of Hiyori's strikes. Not particularly. I'm a bit too busy to create a healthy relationship. He struck, only to be blocked again. Between my job as a Shinigami representative and school, I have next to no time to myself. Besides, there's no one at school who interests me. Oh? What about this Inoue person? Lisa inquired. Tell me about her. Ichigo blocked another attack with difficulty. Hiyori was really fast when she wanted to be. Inoue's full name is Inoue Orihime. She's a bit quiet, and very odd when it comes to food choices. She'll put peanut butter in spaghetti, for crying out loud. Ichigo, distracted from talking, narrowly dodged out of the way of Hiyori's stab and tried for a sideways cut, which was deflected. Anyway, she has the ability to reject reality within a limited area of effect, and as such usually acts as our healer, rejecting our wounds. She has a powerful shield as well that rejects any attack that hits it. Ichigo jumped back, narrowly avoiding being cleaved in two from Hiyori's wickedly fast slice. Inoue does have one attack that has some serious potential, but she doesn't like hurting people, so it's mostly unused. We've been friends for years through a mutual friend, Tatsuki, but she developed the powers when I was still learning how to be a Shinigami, and we grew to be friends through invading Soul Society. Hey Berry-tan. Guess what? Mashiro piped up. What is it, Mashiro? Ichigo asked tightly, locking blades with Hiyori for a moment before breaking contact and going in for a stab, which was easily dodged. He couldn't afford to be distracted from the battle, or else he'd be seriously hurt. You've kept on that mask for more than a minute now. You're doing really well. Ichigo froze. Wait, what? Indeed, he was still wearing his mask. His obvious shock made Hiyori stop her next attack. Come on, Strawberry. Just then, Ichigo's mask crumbled. On minute, 27 seconds, Hachijin announced. Well done, Ichigo, you multiplied your mask length limit by more than 4 that time. Lisa smiled and placed a bookmark in her manga before closing it. You see the key now, Ichigo. You can't keep focusing on the mask. By paying attention to the time, you're anticipating the mask crumbling, which makes it happen as your Ryatsu responds to your will. As long as you don't think about it, and just focus on the fight, your limit will increase by leaps and bounds. Treat it as a part of yourself. Panting for air, Ichigo couldn't help a grin. Thanks. By the way, what time is it? Lisa glanced at her watch. It's about 6 o'clock in the morning. And as though that were an adrenaline shot, Ichigo stood straight up in horror. Oh shit! Gotta go. He used Shunpa, rushing to the exit the Vizard underground training facility, only to be stopped by Kensei. What do you think you are doing? Kensei demanded. Taking care of personal business, Ichigo responded coldly. Don't worry, I'll be back, and I won't tell anyone where you are. Let him go, Kensei, Shinji ordered. He may be one of us now, but he's still a human too. He has a family and things he has to do. Kensei hesitated, but stepped aside. Ichigo nodded at him. Thanks, Shinji. Then he was gone with another shuinpa. Crap, oh crap, oh crap, oh crap. Ichigo dashed home as fast as he could. Please don't let me be too late. He was almost there, when he heard, Jodi. Ichigo swore and tried to go even faster. Ing. Ichigo quickly dove through the window and into his body just before his door burst open thanks to his father's flying leap. Ioi Kaigaga. Ichigo's eyes flew open and he lashed out, punching his father in the face. His father's momentum made Ishin's legs fly forward as his head flew back, bringing him to a stop by Ichigo's bed. Bitch, please. Ichigo growled, stomping over his father and out his bedroom door. That was too close. Little did he know that his father was thinking the same thing. That was close, Ichigo. You need to be more careful with your body, Ishin thought seriously. Ishin flexed his arms as he got to his feet. I'm almost recovered, he thought as he quickly analyzed his Ryatsu. Soon, I'll be Shinigami once again, and then I'll have to face the music with my son. He extended his senses downstairs. He could sense Keirin's slowly growing Ryatsu, and Yuzu's budding one. Masaki, I pray our children stay safe. For war is coming, and I fear our home will be drawn in. Ichigo yawned as he walked to school. He wasn't sleepy at all. His body had gotten plenty of rest over the night, but he was mentally and spiritually fatigued. Maybe I should skip school, he paused to consider. I need all the strength I can get for Kido practice, and then I have Vizard training, not to mention that I want to train the second Zangetsu. He frowned. Except there's only one Zangetsu in my inner world, and his spirit is in the first Zanpakuto. He nodded to himself. My original Zanpakuto represents my Shinigami powers as Zangetsu. Therefore, my second one must be my hollow powers. But wait, my hollow powers are in my mask. Ichigo blinked and scowled more, beginning to pace. Rookie has told me that there are a couple of Shinigami out there whose swords, when they go Shurikai or Bankai, create two separate blades instead of one weapon. Maybe it's similar? He sighed, and rubbed at his temples. He was giving himself a headache. Maybe Inoue can reject fatigue and headaches. Ichigo froze. That's it! He cried, now fully alert as he rushed to school. I need to go see Ishida. He got to class on time and, as was his normal wont, sat by the window. During class, he got out another sheet of paper and began writing a note casually, pretending to pay attention to the teacher. Q, I have an idea for your heritage. It's almost guaranteed to work. SS. He waited for the teacher to turn around and then passed it to his right, to Chad, who quickly glanced at it. His lumbering form clearly expressed silent surprise as he passed it to Ishida. Ichigo watched Ishida out of the corner of his eye, and was particularly pleased when he saw the Quincy almost fall out of his chair in shock. A few moments later, it was passed to Inoue, who looked at the conversation so far. Another minute later, Ichigo had his replies. You had better damn well tell me what it is. Q. Tell us, SS. How can Q reclaim his heritage? R. Ichigo grinned and continued the conversation. It continued as such. Why not have R use her specialty on Q? Have her reject ever losing it? SS. SS, you're a genius. G. Ishida couldn't resist the urge to bang his head once on his desk. I never thought I'd say this, SS, but I feel like a dumbass now. R, would you? Q. Of course. How about after school at the store? R. Ichigo preened, smirking at the paper. I'm surprised you didn't think of it first, Q. You're normally better at this than I am. R's powers are practically godlike when she puts her mind to it. By the way, R, would you mind using your ability on me to reject my fatigue? I didn't get any rest last night, and I have practiced today. SS. SS has a point, R, G. Why didn't you get any rest, SS? And while we're on the topic, you need to explain where you went last night. Your Ryatsu completely dropped off the map. Q. Ichigo lost a smirk. You're right, I owe you an explanation. One long overdue. All will be explained at the store. SS. Later that day, the four of them once again convened at Urahara's shop. Hey, Urahara! We need your underground training basement again, Ichigo greeted. Hi, go on in. Just don't go destroying everything again. I shall join you, Ichigo, Tessai announced. Yes, sensei. Before we begin, there are a few things we need to take care of, Ichigo replied. Very well. When the 5 of them landed in the training area, everyone turned to Ichigo. Ichigo shook his head. Inoue, heal Ishida. Hi, Kurosaki-kun. Yuryu, please lie down. Ishida nodded and did so. Soten kiss-hun. 2 pieces of her hairpins glowed and transformed into fairies, which sped over to opposite ends of the Quincy, one at his feet, the other at his head. Inoue kneeled and put her hands on the barrier it created, closing her eyes. Yes, I see what stopped his power. His body was overwhelmed by Ryatsu and burned out his ability to gather it. This should just take a minute. Indeed, a minute later, Inoue rose and the fairies returned to her hairpins. Ishida, taking the hint, also got up. He took a deep breath. Okay. He raised his right arm and let his Quincy bangle fall from his wrist, trying to summon spiritual energy from his surroundings. There was no lack of it with Ichigo there, constantly emitting some, but Ishida reveled in the warmth of finally being able to gather the Ryatsu. He formed his Quincy bow and with a smile, fired a single arrow at a boulder, which exploded on impact. Ha! Still got it. Yay! Inoue yelled, jumping for joy. Urahara has his powers back. The Quincy turned and bowed low to Inoue. Thank you, Orihime. I fear I can never repay you. It's nothing, really. Inoue smiled with her eyes closed, holding the back of her head in embarrassment. Now your turn, Kurosaki-kun. Ichigo lied down and let Inoue heal him. When she was done, he felt rather refreshed physically, but mentally unchanged. Thank you, Inoue. Oh well, I'll get some sleep tonight if I can. Now spill, Kurosaki, Ishida demanded. Why did you suddenly go AWOL? Because if I didn't, there was a chance everything would have gone foobar, Ichigo replied. The Vizard approached me last night. Wait, AWOL? Foobar? Inoue asked, confused. AWOL means away without leave, Chad told her quietly. Foobar means ed up beyond all repair. They're military terms. He turned to Ichigo. The Vizard approached you? Aren't they the Shinigami with hollow powers that were banished 100 years ago? Ichigo nodded. Remember, Urahara mentioned them last night. That leads to my confession. He took a deep breath. I have hollow powers too. Until yesterday, I couldn't control them, and my inner hollow would try to take over at the worst moments. How long? Ishida asked quietly. How long have I had them? Since Urahara helped me regain my powers so we could save Rukia, Ichigo answered just as quietly. How long have I known? I first fought him in my inner world while I was fighting Kenpachi, but I didn't know he was gonna stick around. He took over for the first time when I fought Byakuya. Ever since, I've been suppressing him on my own willpower, but he kept getting stronger. That's why I was reluctant to change into my Shinigami form. I was afraid. Ichigo shook his head. I didn't know how to tell you guys. I was afraid of you fearing me. But I beat him down and hard last night, and he'll leave me alone for a couple of weeks. And I have a new power to go with it too. Idiot, Ishida insulted. We wouldn't fear you. We'd have done what we could to help. He's right, Ichigo, Chad rumbled. Besides, remember what Urahara mentioned? I have hollow-like powers too. I don't know how I'll evolve next. Can we see the power? Inoue asked. Truth be told, she was a little nervous with the knowledge that Ichigo had hollow powers. What if he turns on us when he uses them? I'll feel better when I see him using them. Ichigo nodded, looking reassured. I have a time limit on this which I'm working to extend, so I can't use it for very long. About a minute and a half so far. I should be able to use it in human form as well. After all, the inner hollow is still part of my soul. Ichigo reached up with his left hand and tore the air in front of his face, summoning his hollow mask. Whoa! Ishida yelled, jumping back. Kurosaki, your Ryatsu. Yeah, I know. It's a lot more hollow-like now, Ichigo replied with a nod. Just be glad I didn't go Bankai first. Then the power output is enormous. Inoue felt fear creeping up inside her throat. Unlike the others, she had only one attack, and it didn't have a good history of working. She knew it was her fault for lacking the conviction to attack and truly want to hurt someone, but she had the overwhelming feeling of sheer, abject terror. The hollow Ryatsu was too strong, too overwhelming. Inoue couldn't stop looking at Ichigo's mask, and she could swear that it was grinning at her, leering at her, sensing her fear and feeding on it, making it stronger. And he hasn't even gone full power yet. She began quivering in fear. Ichigo noticed Inoue begin shaking. Is she afraid of me like this? He was a little saddened and a little hurt that she didn't trust him, but he had known there was a chance of this happening. He slowly reached up, pausing when she flinched, and removed the mask, holding it in his hand. You okay, Inoue? Inoue shakily nodded in affirmative. I'm sorry, Kurosaki-kun. It's just so overwhelming. Your normal Ryatsu is almost comforting to feel now that I'm used to it. With your hollow mask, she shuddered violently. It changed. It felt so violent, so disturbing, and so overwhelming. She lowered her head in shame. I need help getting stronger. My Shun Rika is not getting stronger, while all of you are. Chad's arm keeps evolving. Ishida gets faster and stronger with his Quincy attacks, and Kurosaki-kun got Bankai, and now this hollow mask. On the contrary, a new voice echoed. Everyone turned around in surprise and saw Urahara walking over to them. Your Shun Rika is based on your own heart and will. The stronger your will, the stronger they get. You rarely even say I reject anymore, and when you do, it works faster and stronger, much like Kido, Urahara revealed. Your defensive and healing abilities are growing stronger every time you use them. The next step is to work on your attack, and to do that, we need to work with you to help you gain the will to hurt. But I'm a pacifist, Inoue protested. I don't like hurting people. But you'll do it in order to save lives, yes? Urahara prodded. As you are now, your attack is easily countered, and you might even hurt or kill Subaki by trying to attack when your heart isn't in it. A light flashed from Inoue's right hairpin, which flew in front of her and morphed into an irate-looking black-haired ninja-like fairy with wings akin to bats. The lower half of his face was covered by a blank white cloth that extended to his shoulders. He's right, Oriheim, Subaki stated firmly, arms crossed. My power and speed increases with your willingness to hurt your opponent, but you're too kind-hearted. You never want to hurt anyone. He reached out and smacked Inoue's forehead with surprising force for such a tiny being, making Inoue reach up and rub the spot Subaki had hit. Another light, this time from Inoue's left hairpin, zoomed and assumed another form. This one was a girl, a blonde with topknot, a red skirt and a friendly-looking face. Oriheim-chan, Subaki is right. Your pacifistic nature is admirable, but you need to accept that there are situations that you cannot solve without violence, Shuno the fairy said sadly. The liberties people enjoy are hard won by the sacrifices of those who fight for them. You need to learn how to set aside your personal doubts and dislike of violence when it's necessary if you want to keep up with your friends. Subaki sighed, flapping his wings a couple of times to reach Inoue's eye level. Oriheim, not all protection is passive. Sometimes you have to retaliate, and hard, in order to protect yourself and your friends. Your sword must strike, else your enemies will keep battering at your shield until you falter. Call me when you have the will to fight. With a small flash, he became a ball of light once more, shooting back into the Inoue's hairpin. With a nod to Inoue, Shuno did the same. After several moments of silence, Ishida approached Inoue. Oriheim. No, Yuryu, Inoue cut him off. I need some time to think. Ishida hesitated, but nodded, backing off. Guys, I am going to go home. Call me if you need anything. Okay, Inoue, Ichigo agreed. I hope you find your answers. Me too, Kurosaki-kun. Me too, she replied quietly, walking to the exit. Urahara nodded at the others and escorted her out. I'm going too, Kurosaki, Chad, Ishida told them. I need to reacquaint myself with my powers, and find another way to get stronger without the Sanrei glove. Ichigo smirked. No matter how strong you get, I'll still kick your ass. Ishida snorted. Just you wait, Kurosaki. I'll be up to your level in no time. He turned away, hiding his own smirk as he walked away. Ichigo turned to Chad, half expecting the very quiet giant of a man to leave as well. Chad merely shrugged. I'm hoping to get some training as well. Unlike you or Ishida, I need to be fighting to increase my skills. I figure that I can train from dodging your Kido as you learn them, hopefully increase my speed to match my strength. The human Shinigami nodded. It made sense. Ichigo could train his Kido against a moving target, and Chad could train his speed. He turned to Tessai, who had been silent since arrival in the underground training facility. Tessai-sensei, I apologize for the delay, but it was necessary. I understand, Ichigo. With the upcoming threat, Hiyori needs his powers to survive, and it is best not to keep such powerful secrets from your allies, Tessai concurred. Now let us begin. Given your large Ryatsu capacity, you must first learn to control it, or else risk harming yourself and others. It is fortunate you now have the ability to do so in human form. It restricts your ability to call on your Ryatsu, which will serve as another training tool. How do I control my Ryatsu? Ichigo asked curiously. The only things I've used my Ryatsu for is my Getsuga Tensho and for powering this one orb that provided a powerful enough shield to break through the barrier surrounding Tsurugi. But you know how to put more or less Ryatsu into your attacks? Tessai asked pointedly. Of course. Then you know what it feels like, Tessai concluded. Good, that makes teaching you easier. I want you to sit and meditate. Grasp your Ryatsu, feel it as it exudes from you and into your surroundings. When you feel comfortable with that, try feeling mine and your friend's Ryatsu. See if you can differentiate it. Ichigo nodded. Patience wasn't his strong suit by any measure, but Tessai was once captain of the Kido Corps, so he knew what he was doing. Ichigo sat cross-legged and closed his eyes, trying to relax his normal senses so he could focus more on his feel of Ryatsu. It was a slow process. He had to fight not to fidget. He regretted asking Inoue to reject his fatigue. His physical energy wanted to be used. Tessai had gone to go train Chad, casting fireballs at the man, who dodged as best he could. Ichigo tried his best to ignore the sounds of Heido 33, Sukatsui, and Chad's grunts as he dodged or was hit respectively. Damn it, I need to focus. Ichigo took a deep breath and breathed out slowly. Ichigo remembered the advice he had received from Shiba Ganju, a very hot-headed member of the Shiba clan, who had helped him break into Soul Society on his sister's orders. Ganju had helped Ichigo feel his Ryatsu for the first time by telling him to picture a dark circle in his mind and imagine moving towards the center of it. Perhaps a derivation, then Ichigo pictured a void, where there was no sight, no sound, only him and his Ryatsu. Slowly, without his notice, the sounds around him faded away. With his eyes closed, he could see nothing anyway. With nothing distracting him, Ichigo could feel the Ryatsu pulsing, flowing strongly inside him. There was so much, Ichigo could hardly believe he could contain it all. It made the fact that he constantly emitted some much more believable. Speaking of which, he could feel the Ryatsu he emitted around him, giving him a sense of his surroundings. Useful, Ichigo thought. I might not be able to be stealthy, but at least I'm always rather aware of what's around me, as long as I pay attention to that. He suddenly made a connection. So that's what Hachijin was doing earlier. He was just in touch with his Ryatsu. He was probably emitting his own Ryatsu to keep tabs on things. Ichigo immersed himself in his Ryatsu, feeling it, exploring it. He could sense the small streaks of hollow Ryatsu merged with his own, giving it a slightly more violent feel. He found it rather interesting that even with the hollow mask off, there were streaks like that. I wonder if it has any significance? Aside from potentially advertising me as a Vizard, anyway. Once he felt he explored his Ryatsu enough, Ichigo reached out and tried to sense Tessai and Chad. This was harder. He had to reach past the Ryatsu his body let out. It was akin to trying to listen to someone talking when one had a train loudly going by, its whistle blaring. However, after an indeterminate amount of time, and repeatedly having to calm himself down and stop being impatient, Ichigo finally made out Chad's Ryatsu. Having found it, Ichigo focused on it, and was able to approximate how far away he was, and in which general direction. Once he'd done that, Ichigo reflected on Chad's Ryatsu, what he could feel of it anyway. I can sense is better than I can Tessai's because Chad's Ryatsu actually does feel more hollow-like than Shinigami. That makes it substantially different from my own Ryatsu, and the difference makes it easier to detect. Ichigo was nothing if not stubborn though, so he kept at it, looking for Tessai's Ryatsu. It didn't take long, and when that was done, he opened his eyes, squinting at the bright light when his eyes had adjusted to the near-total darkness behind his eyelids. Sound suddenly rushed back to him as his meditative state was destroyed, making Ichigo wince. Chad was still dodging, but he looked very tired, even with his Brazo di Resh del Gigante active. Ichigo wondered how long he'd been out of it, as it was nigh impossible to tell time in here. He frowned. Given Chad's high level of endurance, it looked like Ichigo had been meditating for hours. Ichigo got up, wincing again as he felt his legs protest the sudden movement. Yeah, definitely been sitting like that for too long. Tessai-sensei. Tessai stopped sending blue fireballs at Chad, who sat against a nearby boulder to rest for a while. Ah, Ichigo. You finished? Yeah. Good. Now you just need practice to sense people more quickly, Tessai stated firmly. Practice when your own time, we are moving on. Bakudo require a finesse you currently lack, so we shall begin with Heido. Is there one in particular you are interested in? Ichigo paused to think, before slowly nodding. I saw Kachiki Byakuya using a spell he called Byakurai. Tessai nodded sagely. That is Heido for Byakurai. It is one of the beginner Kido, yet it is extremely devastating if used by the right person. He nodded again. In your case, it will make an excellent long-distance attack that uses far less Ryatsu than your Getsuga Tensho. As you no doubt saw in your battles with Kachiki, it can be devastatingly quick, and capable of piercing even the toughest of armors. There are two downsides to this spell. One is control. Byakurai's piercing power and speed depends on your ability to compress your Ryatsu into smaller and smaller volumes. Also, not controlling Byakurai correctly can negatively impact the user, sending electric shocks through the body. What's the other downside? Ichigo asked curiously. The second downside is the small area of effect. Even at its most powerful, the hole Byakurai creates is rather small, and as such it is usually non-fatal. As you may have noticed, Byakurai is not used by many people, only precision-oriented battlers wield Byakurai effectively. I surmise Kachiki Byakuya is one such user? Ichigo nodded, grimacing in remembrance. Byakuya destroyed my soul sleep and chain link when I had absorbed Rukia's powers. Then he left me to die. That was right before you and Urahara helped me regain my powers. Indeed, Tessai agreed. Go ahead and try it against that boulder over there. Ichigo blinked. I thought most Kido have incantations? Most do, Tessai admitted. However, Byakurai, being an extremely low-level spell, has none. Ichigo took a deep breath and closed his eyes, calling up his Ryatsu. It was more sluggish and harder to call out in his human form than it was in Shinigami form, but he managed. He turned to the side and raised his right arm up, pointing to the boulder using his index and middle fingers as he'd seen Byakuya do. Gathering Ryatsu to his fingers, Ichigo frowned as he struggled to keep his Ryatsu from exploding outwards. He said compression. Ichigo kept the Ryatsu at his fingertips, pushing more and more into the small area. The Kido trainee's forehead was sweating lightly from effort to keep it there. Heido for Byakurai! Ichigo cried, his eyes flying open and focusing on his target. Even as he shouted the words, he felt the Ryatsu stored in his fingertips change in an indescribable way. The closest thing he could say was that it felt electric. Emerging from his fingertips shot an electric bolt, jagged and fast, that shot into and through the boulder he'd aimed at. Ichigo took a deep breath after he fired the shot. That was a bit easier than I expected, he confessed. That is because you have already mastered the individual aspects of each part of Byakurai, Tessai revealed. Your Shunpa training with Shihoin Yorichi taught you to gather Ryatsu in parts of your body. Your Bankai compresses your Ryatsu, increasing your abilities dramatically. The only new thing you did here was compress your Ryatsu yourself. Now you need to train on how quickly you can use it. Ichigo sighed and nodded, he'd seen that coming. He was about to do it again, but Chad got up and got his attention. Aim at me, Chad said simply. I need to continue my speed training. You sure? Yeah. Ichigo nodded. He refrained from closing his eyes this time. It was a bad habit that he couldn't afford to have, and began his speed training. Heido for Byakurai! Heido for Byakurai! It was about midnight that night when Ichigo helped Chad home. The large teenager was worn out from the training. Ichigo had to hand it to him, though Chad was faster than he looked, even without his power. Again tomorrow? Chad asked as they reached his place. Yeah, Ichigo acknowledged, helping him inside. See you then. Chad merely nodded and closed the door, locking it. Ichigo began walking home, feeling a little proud of himself. He now had a Kido under his belt. Granted, it's not a terribly powerful one, but it's a Kido. He sighed. I have so much I need to work on mask training, Kido training, and my secret second Zanpakuto training which I have yet to do. Ichigo made his way home and climbed into his room through a nearby tree. He truly did not want to deal with his father at the moment, and he was almost undoubtedly waiting to ambush him in the living room. Zangetsu and I haven't talked in a while. With a few moments of intense focus, Ichigo brought out Zangetsu's spiritual form, who sat across from him in his room. Manifesting a Zanpakuto's spirit was one of the crucial steps to Bankai, but Zangetsu had materialized himself on occasion when Ichigo was in danger. Hello, Ichigo. Hey, old man. Ichigo leaned back on his bed. Tell me more about yourself, partner. Zangetsu inclined his head. I am a very practical man. Even so, I have my pride, as you discovered when you neglected to learn more about me after learning my name. Ichigo winced. He'd been cocky and stupid for a long while. Yeah, I am sorry for that, Zangetsu. Apology accepted, the Zanpakuto spirit replied stoically. I like watching sunsets. It is a pity you do not see very many. Yeah, Ichigo agreed. They're beautiful. Wait, every time I'm in my inner world, it's always sunny, overcast or raining. Do you get to see sunsets there? Not often, Zangetsu admitted. They only appear when you are feeling at peace, which is rather rare with the amount of trouble you get into. The Vizard nodded sadly. Sorry, old man. I'll see if I can make the time to watch a sunset or two a week. I would appreciate that, Ichigo, Zangetsu acknowledged. After a pause, he asked, Are you troubled? Ichigo sighed. His Zanpakuto was one of the few beings he could truly open up to. Ichigo's trust in Zangetsu was absolute. Fortunately for Ichigo, Zangetsu was extremely observant and could tell when something was wrong. Somewhat. Inoue was scared of me when I put on the hollow mask. I don't know how to feel about that. I half expected it, but it still hurt to see it. Give her time. She knows you, and trusts you without the mask. You must admit your Ryatsu is very disturbing when you put on the mask. Ichigo sighed again. Yeah, you're right. I'm also worried about Rukia. I am still loath to leave her in Soul Society after they tried to kill her. Remember, that was because of Aizen's unseen machinations, Zangetsu reminded him. I know, and it's her choice anyway. Ichigo shook his head. Another thing that's bugging me is that I still have so much to learn in order to protect myself and others. I need to learn some Kido in order to keep from being susceptible to it. I need to learn how to use my hollow powers effectively. I thought I'd gotten so strong, but there's always someone stronger, better, isn't there? There is. Do you think we'll ever be able to rest? It feels like there's always something, someone, trying and damn near succeeding in killing us. Zangetsu looked out the window at the crescent moon. Perhaps one day. Perhaps when Aizen is defeated for good. I need a vacation. I sincerely hope you get one. Thanks for the talk, Zangetsu. Anytime, Ichigo. Ichigo nodded at his Zanpakuto spirit as it faded away, back into his inner world. I really do need that vacation, Ichigo thought to himself as he got ready for bed. At least for now, sleep is my escape. He glanced out the window at the crescent moon Zangetsu had been looking at. He had a bad feeling that he would soon be fighting for his life again. If only the dawn didn't come so soon. In Hueco Mundo, Aizen Sasuke smiled. Okuiora, I have a small mission for you in the living world. A man around 5'6", slight in build with dark green eyes and twin teal lines running down from his eyes, bowed. His skin was ash gray, and he had a hollow hole in the lower part of his throat. There was a portion of a hollow mask on the left side of the man's head, not obscuring his face at all, resembling a broken helmet. His expression unchanging, he rose up once more. Your will be done, Aizen-sama. Thanks for watching this video. You really enjoy this video. Like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow Neoryu777 for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.